Hello,
Are live.
Senator Bonner,
Excused.
Senator Case, Senator Nethercott, Senator Scott,
Excused.
and Chairman Driscoll.
Four.
I will do my best, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and committee. All right, Mr. Chairman, I bring you House Bill 187, and Mr. Chairman, the essence of this bill is simply that it would require residency of county elected officials. The couple things we did over on the House side is that we have now removed district attorneys, county attorneys, and coroners from this. That was on the concern of experience and education, and then especially of smaller counties. Are there enough people around willing to do that, that there's a sufficient pool? So, Mr. Chairman, we took those offices out, but we've still, of course, left in county assessors, county clerks, the commissioners, the county sheriff, and the county treasurer. And then, Mr. Chairman, on page 4 of the bill, Romanet 2, line 13, we're saying that in the office of a county assessor, clerk, commissioner, sheriff, or treasurer, and what the person fails to reside in the county from which he's elected, if they, that's just is covering residency, if they move out of the county and declare residency elsewhere. Mr. Chairman, we also included language it was conforming throughout, but starting on page 2, line 4, with concerning the county assessor, giving a better definition of what we would consider residency to be. So that being on line 4, page 2, beginning on the first day of the term and through the last day of the term, for which, in this case, the county assessor serves. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the bill. Obviously, this has come out of mainly brought to light out of issues that Western counties had with a county attorney being elected from never having been a resident of that county, and then the added issue last fall of one of our good commissioners who moved out of the county and declared residency in the adjoining county. And so that would be why we brought the language in that would make that similar to what currently exists for legislators, where if you move out of your district, you must give up the seat. So, Mr. Chairman and committee, that's the bill. Happy to take questions.
I'll start. Is this going to affect a sitting commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, yes, at the back of the bill, the language there concerning vacancy when deemed to occur on page 4, starting line 4, statute 22-18-101, that would affect that. That would be the intent.
Representative Hunt, how many years does he have left on his term? I know we're talking about an individual, but what's he have left?
Mr. Chairman, I believe he is due up this next year.
So if we move the date to 2022, it would make it where it doesn't affect him.
That would correct.
Would you be opposed to that?
No, not in the least.
I hate to do that. Cook County has an extra commissioner at this point in time, and they're kind of proud of it. But I hate to pull him out of office before his term's up. And I understand he's put his shoulder down. I'll make a bit of a statement, but the county hasn't sued or made any real moves on the thing other than to express displeasure. And I personally have a very hard time removing somebody that the county hasn't made the moves to do. There's another cop.
Representative, are there enough people in these counties, like Niobrara and Weston, to fill all these roles?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Nethercott, yes, I believe there are. But I would say that that's why, again, we removed county attorneys, even though in the case of Weston County, that's one of the reasons it came forward. But county attorneys and coroners, when you whittle it down to what makes the gears turn every day of home rule with county commissioners, the clerk, the assessor, and the treasurer, I do believe there are a sufficient number of people who would be willing to run for those positions.
Does your dad support the bill?
Wow.
But Mr. Chairman, He has voiced support for it, but I would say that he's no longer a commissioner.
Further questions?
Yeah, Mr.
Senator
Mr. Chairman, thank you. You know, for me in Laramie County, this is not that big of a deal, but I don't really know its impact on the rest of the state. And so you're aware of one person that it affects, but are there more, do you think, or do we know that?
Mr. Chairman and Senator, at this time, not that I'm aware of, but I would point out to the committee that this goes back beyond just what's taken place the last couple of years. I can give you an example of, 20 some plus years ago, there was a county attorney, I want to say in Sublette County, where same deal, where he moved out of the state. Frankly, he moved to Hawaii and basically said, please send my paychecks here. I'm not coming home. And to that point, something that was brought up in the good county commissioner who moved to Cook County, one of the residents in a meeting said, which I thought was a fair point. If you move out of the county, we continue to pay you per diem to hold the office. So you're just moving across the county line in this case, but that still stands to reason that if you move to Phoenix, are we going to continue to pay you per diem to come back home every 2 weeks to attend meetings? But anyway, rambling answer, Senator, but to this, at the present time, I'm not aware of any other issues, but there have been problems in the past.
Including our county. We had a commissioner left, went to Texas, same thing, kept seat. I think it's a good bill. I don't know how to put it in the form of a question, but we want people to represent us living in our counties. And in the cases you can't, what you've covered, the ones that require expertise that little counties don't have. But I've never seen a failure of people to run for county commissioners, nor the 4 elected courthouse jobs, at least in little counties. They're benefited jobs. So they're some of the better jobs. If you're in a rural area, they're high paying jobs. So.
And
I
Mr.
know
Chairman,
you're laughing.
I agree with you. And I thought a little bit about sheriff, that's kind of a harder one. You gotta, that's tougher. You say Niobrara, 2,000 people, and you got to come up with a sheriff. It's got to be a law enforcement trained. That could be difficult. But on the other hand, the sheriff is really important to be elected by the people. I say full speed ahead, move the bill. I don't know if there's anybody else who wants to testify.
Representative Hunt, any further comments? Real
Just
quick?
very briefly, yeah, Mr. Chairman and Senator Case, and we did have that discussion when decided, working on what a couple offices to take out of here, but ultimately left sheriffs in. Yes, it does require law enforcement training, but sort of generally was decided that it would be if, the chief law enforcement officer of your county, people would be probably much more comfortable with being arrested by someone who they know and who knows the community and understands the issues on the ground than potentially somebody from not in the area.
Thank you. Anybody in the crowd?
Chairman? This is Danielle Creech with the LSO. We do have Marty Ertman in the waiting room online with their hand raised.
Very good. Let's go to Marty and then we'll go to Jeremiah Reeman following. Ms. Ertman, welcome. Welcome, Ms. Ertman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, I lost a little bit. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, we can. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Marty Ertman and I'm a county commissioner in Weston County. I apologize for my glasses, but I won't be able to read what I have to say if I take them off.
All is
Pardon me, I'm sorry.
good. All is good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I appreciate this time to be able to speak to you. I hope that I did send you written testimony and I would stand for questions on that written testimony, but I do have some other concerns that are not addressed in this bill, and I'd like to bring them up if I may.
Please, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. One of the questions that I have that I would like to address is I am under the understanding, and I would like the sponsor of the bill to tell me, but I did listen to the testimony. I believe that the clerk of district court was left out along with the coroner and the county and district or district attorney, which I support the county attorney or the district attorney to be able to be left out. But if those two were left out, and the reason that was described on the House floor was that they were specialized, I would move to argue such a statement in the fact that the others are specialized also. Each of them would go through an extensive amount of education. They have follow-up education. There are many statutes, but that this body knows that they change. The federal rules change. Quite a few things. And so I would name that they were all specialized. And so if the definition for removing those others was because it was specialized, I would argue that all of them are. So there's one. Number two, in the bill, the word reside is in there, and I would need resides. I would need a definition of that. This morning, I heard a lot of testimony with the talk of residency, but in this bill, it states resides. So in the written testimony that I wrote, I gave you an example of a person that might live just outside of the county line, but commerces, banks, works, school, gets their mail in this county. And yet, if this bill were to pass, they would not be able to necessarily run for those office, even though the county, they just don't live in that county. So my question to you is, if the definition of reside is that, their residency would be in the other county, but would they be permitted to perhaps put a cot in their office? Could they put a motorhome in the parking lot? This is a Monday through Friday job. It's a 9-to-5 job. I don't understand why we couldn't just let them go home. Number three, one of the biggest issues that I have, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, is when would the Board of County Commissioners declare the vacancy? If the person that is newly elected understood that they would have to find a place to live or reside in the county, has from the first Tuesday from the general election, so the first Tuesday in November, to the first Monday in January, and they're not able to do that, they are not able to find one, are we to swear that person in, or the county clerk or the judge, swear that person in, and then we declare a vacancy? Do we have to swear them in because that would make them a person, the person that was elected, or do we not swear them in and then there has been nobody put in that place? This is kind of confusing, and I have been researching this quite a bit. But so my answer is, so if we do swear them in and then we declared a vacancy, I'm not wanting, I feel sorry for the board that's going to have to face the public that just now vetoed their choice. It would go through the vacancy laws that are already in place. So the Central Committee of whatever party there we get confused again. But let's say that we have to swear them in. It will have to be the Central Committee that picks somebody, and we might not choose any one of those three. We may not choose the next three. And then where do we go from there? It's an interesting, it's a little interesting to me. So those are a few of my concerns. I can probably come up with some more. I would be happy to stand for questions. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you taking the time tonight to go through this, and thank you.
Committee questions? I've got one. It probably a little personal, goes back. What's your thought on your commissioner that's living in Kirk County at this point?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, when the group of people came in and had that conversation, the question was asked of me, and I said and pardon me, but I said the devil known is better than the devil unknown. And the reason behind that, Mr. Chairman, is that there's a lot of institutional knowledge. He's in his second term. And we've gleaned a lot from him, and he's taken the time to learn that. I don't see what has changed because he's crossed the county line. Would I have liked to him? There is a part of me that says he should resign because the people want him to be in the county. But I don't understand. He should stay. I believe he should stay. Thank you.
That was hence my deal. And now I'll follow up. What would be your thoughts if someone ran for commissioner for a 4-year term and within a week picked up and went to California or Hawaii and continued to try to stay in office?
Mr. Chairman, I missed part of what you said. Did you say move to?
So I'm going to give you what is example. It's a different one because I happen to be really good friends with one that's crossed county line. Spent yesterday with him, by the way. What would be your opinion if somebody ran for county commissioner or one of these others and then packed up and left and went to California or Florida or Hawaii and billed the county for plane tickets coming back and forth through health benefits, or maybe even in the case of one that I know of that just doesn't bother to show up and does it, just draws the check for 4 years? What would be your thoughts on how to deal with that, or would you be supportive of it?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, there are laws on the books for that, Mr. Chairman. You must reside. You must be a bona fide resident of the state of Wyoming. And so we could remove you. The governor could remove you with because of that. So that one, I don't even see that as a problem, Mr. Chairman.
I'll make a quick comment. We had one the governor tried to remove that he failed on not that long ago. As long as I maintain my house up in the Pines in Weston County and declare that's my residence, I am a resident of Wyoming. But I'm giving you what ifs because I do think we're going to see this as it becomes aware. It's pretty easy to go down that path. I see both sides, and I'm using you. I truly value you as a commissioner. You've been a friend of mine for many years, but I tend to see the devil in the details, and it worries me a little bit. I'm not sure where I see the real harm in this bill. Back to your motorhome, really residency, and we went through that this morning on a bill, is where your intent is to be. So your residence can actually be a tent in City Park, and you can go wherever on the weekends and still maintain your residency in the county. So that can happen. But I guess I'm playing devil's advocate on where it's at, and I'm not sure I see where the harm, if this bill passes, what it really harms on the thing.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I believe that you're not giving enough credence to the voters. I believe that your voters would see right through that. There was an example I was given at one time that perhaps somebody from a poor county like mine would want to run for an office in Campbell County that has a much better salary base. I believe in the voters. I think they would know that. And I understand what you're saying, that they would come along and do that. But I believe that there are already places in statute. One of them is, there is a requirement for how many times you have to be in your office. And if there was anything that could be changed, it would be nice if we tightened up that statute and get that a little closer so that we could have a little better way of monitoring, pardon me, it's late at night. Those situations. And then we can use those statutes to remove someone from office. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Reedman.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Jeremiah Reedman here on behalf of the County Commissioners Association. I'll be very brief. I know you're tired. Mr. Chairman, as I understand it, there is some history here. And in fact, if you have a little bit of time to read Commissioner Ertman's email, she really has done an extensive job of going back in history. And when I say history, I'm talking hundreds of years of history, and it does intertwine with the conversation that happened this morning. But Mr. Chairman, it is my understanding that at one point in time, all county elected officials did have a requirement to be residents. And I tried to do my own research amongst this session, and I apologize, I haven't been able to do that completely, but that residency requirement was ultimately removed. And I don't know if that was a creature of this constitutional question. So I don't bring that forward as the reason, but it is part of our history. As it stands right now, the county assessor is the only individual that has well, I shouldn't say a residency requirement. They have to own property in the county for which they serve. So that is there. Mr. Chairman, you have heard that there are at least 2 county officials that reside outside of their jurisdiction. I wanted to provide a little bit more context about that county attorney. That county attorney was actually elected against an individual that was running in the county. And I know we've taken out the county attorneys here, but it is sort of a creature of the voters made a choice over somebody that was in their jurisdiction. And to Commissioner Ertman's point, are we taking that choice away from the voters? Mr. Chairman, we certainly agree with the sentiment. In fact, if you go back and look at my association's history, at one point in time, we did support putting these sorts of provisions in, but Commissioner Ertman has really brought forward that history and conversation, and the feelings have changed. I do think that there are other ways to address this. In fact, the good House Ag Chairman has brought forward versions of that, requiring that you have to be in office for certain amounts of time, and maybe making some other stipulations such that it does sort of draw you in. You have to be close. You couldn't be at great distance. So there may be some other ways to address this issue. Mr. Chairman, there was some question about, how this is looked in other counties. I know that Niobrara County was also referenced as one that had a terrible time of trying to find a county attorney for a long time. And thankfully, they've got a wonderful county attorney right now. But some of these jurisdictions do have a tough time, not only for county attorneys, the sheriff, for the coroner, but for some others. I was talking to our board president, Commissioner Willix, in Converse County, and some years ago, they were looking for a new treasurer, having to appoint one. And thankfully, they ended up with 3 good candidates. One of the best candidates that was brought forward was in the neighboring county. And now that individual is willing to make the move to come over and become a resident, but should we prevent that? Mr. Chairman, I do think it's also relevant to talk about, Teton County or associated counties that have cost of living issues. Should we prevent somebody that might live in Alpine from being an elected official in Teton County simply because they can't afford the price of housing in the community? So, Mr. Chairman, we do oppose the bill. It is a much better bill as it stands now. I will say, and Commissioner Ertman talked to this resident requirement. I know the intent of the good House member is to suggest that you could be an out-of-county individual, get elected to go into the county, and then you have to be there on your first day in office. And I'm obviously not an attorney. We have a good one here. There could be some question. Do you, with that resident word in there, does that mean you're, similar to game and fish requirements that you have to have been a year before? So you have to have been a year before by the time you hit the first. Again, I know that's not the intent, but it does beg the question of whether we need to tighten up that particular section if this is to go forward. Mr. Chairman, I'll close in that you were concerned about the sitting commissioner, and The bill does have the provision that if if you do move out, that you would be removed. I think section 2 actually addresses that particular issue for the instance. I may be wrong, but it does say in there that that the residency requirement would come into effect for elected or appointed offices whose terms commence on or after the effective date of this. So I think that probably addresses that one particular situation. Mr. Chairman, I'd stand for questions.
Questions for Mr. Reedman?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Or opposed?
Further questions for Mr. Reedman? Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the waiting room?
Mr. Chairman, we do not have anyone waiting online.
Public testimony is closed. Bill's been moved. Any amendments? None. Question called.
Senator Bonner? Senator Hayes?
Aye.
And Senator Nicholson?
No.
Senator Scott?
Excused.
And Chairman Driscoll?
No, but I'm going to leave the vote open till tomorrow morning, which I believe I can do. I'm going to let both of them. Senator Scott's got the ability to do it. So
You better make some calls.
I can say this is a rare case that you get a lobby a bill that's dead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Appreciate your time.
I've been very for it, but not as applied in Wyoming.
I'm kind of the same, you know, it's hard. You look where you're at.